Welcome to Story Planet, where we bring you relaxing and peaceful tales to help you unwind. Tonight's story is The Sand Traveler. So settle in, get cozy, and let yourself be carried away into the soothing whispers of the desert. Now, let's begin. The desert stretched endlessly, golden sands shimmering under the sun like a vast sea of molten gold. The horizon blurred where the earth met the sky, creating an illusion that the world had no edges, only infinite possibilities. The air was still, the kind of stillness that enveloped everything and made the softest sounds seem profound. Finn paused at the top of a dune, his silhouette a solitary mark against the glowing expanse. The sun hung low, its amber glow promising a cooler embrace as the day melted into evening. Finn had always been drawn to places where silence reigned. Cities had their hum, forests their rustling leaves, and oceans their ceaseless waves. But the desert's silence was different. It was a vast emptiness, yet it felt alive, as though the sands themselves were breathing, holding ancient secrets within their folds. He took a deep breath, the dry air filling his lungs, carrying the faint scent of sun-warmed earth and distant shrubs. This was why he had come. To escape the noise of the world, the cacophony of expectations, and the relentless pace that never let him pause. Here he felt time stretched thin, moments lingering long enough for him to notice their weight. The desert was timeless. Finn adjusted his satchel, its worn leather soft against his shoulder, and began his descent down the dune. The sands shifted under his boots with each step, a quiet whisper accompanying him. His journey had begun weeks ago, but every day in the desert felt new, unmarked by calendars or clocks. The sun was his guide by day, the stars his map by night. He carried only what he needed, a flask of water, a journal filled with sketches and musings, and a sense of wonder that kept him moving forward. As he walked, the dunes seemed to change shape, their golden curves shifting with the wind. The landscape was never the same twice. Finn found himself mesmerized by the patterns the breeze left behind, intricate ripples and swirls etched into the sand like nature's calligraphy. He bent down to trace a finger over one, feeling its cool texture beneath his touch. The day's heat began to fade, replaced by the cool embrace of evening. The sky turned from blue to a gradient of oranges and purples, the kind of colors that couldn't be captured in words or even art. Finn paused again, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon, its last rays casting a golden glow over the sands. The temperature dropped quickly, and he pulled a scarf from his pack, wrapping it loosely around his neck. Nightfall in the desert was magical. The stars emerged one by one, their light pure and unpolluted. Finn's breath caught as he looked up, the vast expanse of the universe laid bare before him. It felt as though he could reach out and touch them, each one a reminder of how small he was, and yet how connected everything seemed. He found a spot sheltered by a cluster of rocks, their dark forms providing a reprieve from the chilling winds. Setting down his pack, he unrolled a small mat and lay on his back, staring up at the sky. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional soft sigh of the wind. Finn's thoughts wandered, carried away by the vastness around him. The desert wasn't empty, he realized. It was full of whispers, of stories waiting to be uncovered. Closing his eyes, he let the sounds of the night envelop him. The desert's whispers were faint but persistent, like an old friend sharing secrets in hushed tones. Finn felt a calmness settle over him, a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. The city, with its crowded streets and endless noise, felt like another lifetime. Here, under the canopy of stars, he was exactly where he needed to be. Sleep came easily, the cool sand beneath him a comforting presence. Finn dreamed of golden dunes rolling endlessly, of ancient trails etched into the sands by countless travelers before him. In his dream, he walked alongside them, their faces obscured but their presence reassuring. He wasn't alone in this vast wilderness. The desert was alive with the echoes of those who had come before, their spirits guiding him forward. As dawn approached, the temperature dropped further, the chill nudging him awake. Finn opened his eyes to find the sky a pale blue, the first light of day touching the tops of the dunes. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the sun to rise. Finn sat up, shaking the sand from his scarf, and took a sip of water from his flask. The liquid was cool and refreshing, a reminder of the small comforts that sustained him. He watched as the sun peeked over the horizon, its light spilling across the sands like liquid gold. The desert came alive in that moment, every grain of sand catching the light, sparkling like a sea of tiny jewels. Finn smiled, a quiet gratitude filling his heart. The desert had welcomed him, its whispers guiding him through its endless expanse. Standing, he gathered his belongings and adjusted his satchel. There was no map for where he was going, only the pull of the horizon and the promise of discovery. Finn took a deep breath, the cool morning air invigorating, and began walking. The sands shifted beneath his feet, their whispers a constant companion. The journey was far from over, and Finn was ready to listen to all the stories the desert had to tell. The morning light stretched long shadows over the sands, painting the dunes with hues of gold and ochre. Finn walked steadily, his footsteps pressing lightly into the cool sand. The desert seemed calmer this morning, the wind a mere whisper brushing past his scarf. He adjusted the strap of his satchel, letting his gaze wander across the horizon where the earth seemed to melt into the sky. There was no path, no marked trail, only the endless expanse ahead. As the sun climbed higher, Finn felt the warmth intensify, radiating from both above and below. The sand shifted with each step, grains sifting through the breeze like scattered jewels. He squinted against the light, spotting something unusual in the distance. A small grove of acacia trees rose like a mirage, their gnarled forms standing defiant against the arid landscape. Finn quickened his pace, drawn by the promise of shade. The grove offered a quiet refuge. Finn dropped his pack beneath the largest tree, and leaned back against its sturdy trunk, his breathing steady as he reached for his flask. The lukewarm water refreshed his parched throat, the simple act of drinking a reminder of life's necessities. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the cool shadows soothe his skin. When he opened them, he noticed he was no longer alone. The figure sat across from him, cross-legged and still, as if he had been part of the grove all along. An old man, his robes the same pale hue as the sands, watched Finn with a calm expression. His silver beard was streaked with sun-worn lines, his eyes deep as if they had seen 1,000 stories unfold. Finn tensed slightly, unsure of how long the man had been there. "You've walked far," the man said, his voice low and even, carrying a weight of wisdom and time. "I have," Finn replied cautiously. "And you?" The old man smiled faintly, gesturing to the grove around them. "I do not walk far. The desert itself comes to me." Finn tilted his head, intrigued by the cryptic answer. "You live here?" "I live where the sands allow me," the man replied. "The desert and I have an understanding. It provides, and I listen." Finn studied him, unsure whether to press further. Something about the man's presence was both unsettling and comforting. There was a stillness to him, as if he belonged to the desert in a way Finn never could. "Why do you walk?" the old man asked suddenly, his gaze piercing but kind. "Few tread these sands without reason." Finn hesitated, the question catching him off guard. "I suppose I'm searching," he said after a moment. "For what, I don't know. Maybe peace, maybe something greater." The old man nodded slowly, as if he had expected the answer. "The desert reveals itself to those who seek, but its truths are not easily given. You must listen carefully." The words hung in the air, carried by the soft rustle of the acacia leaves. Finn leaned forward slightly, his curiosity piqued. "Have you found the desert's truths?" The man chuckled softly, a sound that blended with the wind. The desert has no end to its truths. It speaks to each of us differently. What it tells me may not be what it tells you. Silence settled between them again, broken only by the gentle creak of branches and the faint hum of distant wind. The old man reached into a small leather pouch and withdrew a handful of dried herbs, which he placed into a tin kettle over a low flame. The scent of spiced tea soon filled the grove, warm and inviting. He poured 2 small cups, offering one to Finn. Finn accepted it with a nod of thanks, the warmth of the tea spreading through him as he sipped. Its flavor was rich, earthy, with a hint of something floral. The drink felt like an extension of the desert itself, simple, profound, and nourishing. "Do you know the story of the sand traveler?" the man asked suddenly, breaking the quiet. Finn shook his head. "No, what story is that?" The old man's eyes gleamed, his expression one of quiet amusement. "Long ago, it is said, there was a man who walked these very sands in search of a treasure. He believed it to be hidden deep within the desert, where no map could guide him. He carried little, trusting only the stars to light his path and the whispers of the wind to guide his way." "What happened to him?" Finn asked, his voice hushed. The old man leaned back, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "The man walked for days, weeks, perhaps years. The desert tested him with storms, with thirst, and with loneliness. But it also showed him its beauty, sunrises that painted the world in gold, nights where the stars were close enough to touch, and moments of silence so profound they filled his soul." Finn's breath caught as he listened, the old man's voice weaving the tale with a rhythm that matched the desert's pulse. "In the end," the man continued, "the traveler found no treasure, at least not the one he had sought. Instead, he found something greater. He found himself, his strength, his patience, his connection to the world. The desert gave him that in its own way." Finn frowned slightly. "But what about the treasure he was searching for?" The old man smiled enigmatically, his eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun. "The desert gives each traveler what they truly seek, not what they think they seek. For some, that is gold. For others, it is peace. Perhaps, one day, it will tell you its secrets." Finn sat back, the story lingering in his mind. The man's words felt heavy with meaning, as though they were meant not just for the traveler in the story, but for him as well. The desert stretched out beyond the grove, its vastness both daunting and inviting. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Finn realized he was no longer as certain of his journey's purpose. Perhaps the answers he sought would not come in the form of something tangible. Perhaps they would come in whispers, carried by the wind and etched into the sands. That night, Finn lay beneath the stars, the old man's tale playing over in his mind. The desert felt different now, its silence more alive than ever. As he drifted into sleep, he thought he heard the faintest whisper, a voice carried by the sands telling him its first secret. The dawn broke softly, the horizon glowing with streaks of pink and amber. Finn woke to the cool embrace of the desert's morning, the air carrying a faint chill that hinted at the lingering night. He sat up slowly, shaking the sand from his scarf and running a hand through his hair, now streaked with fine grains of golden dust. The old man had disappeared, leaving no trace of his presence, save for a faint indentation in the sand where he had sat. Finn felt the weight of the man's words, still heavy on his mind, as if they had woven themselves into the fabric of the desert around him. The tale of the sand traveler lingered, whispering truths he couldn't yet fully understand. He stood and stretched, his gaze sweeping over the endless dunes that surrounded him. The desert seemed quieter now, as if it, too, was waiting for him to take his next step. Gathering his belongings, Finn resumed his journey. The sun climbed steadily, its warmth chasing away the morning's coolness. The sands shifted beneath his boots, their soft whispers mingling with the light breeze that brushed past him. It wasn't long before he began to hear something else, A sound carried faintly on the wind, unlike anything he had heard before. It was soft and melodic, a series of notes that rose and fell like the distant hum of an ancient song. Finn paused, tilting his head to listen. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a ghostly tune that wove itself through the air. Intrigued, he followed the melody, letting it guide him as he crossed the dunes. The further he walked, the stronger the song became, its haunting beauty resonating deep within him. Eventually, he crested a particularly high dune and stopped in his tracks. Below him lay a narrow valley, sheltered between two steep ridges of sand. At the valley's center stood a cluster of towering rocks, their jagged forms weathered smooth by centuries of wind and time. The sound he had been following seemed to emanate from these stones, as though the desert itself was singing through them. Finn descended into the valley, his steps careful on the shifting slope. The melody grew clearer with each step, filling the air around him. When he reached the rocks, he ran his fingers over their surfaces, feeling the grooves and etchings left by the wind's relentless touch. The sound seemed to hum through the stones, vibrating faintly beneath his fingertips. He sat down amidst the rocks, closing his eyes to better hear the song. It was unlike any music he had ever known, its rhythm unpredictable yet soothing, its notes both alien and familiar. As he listened, images began to form in his mind. Vast caravans moving across the sands, their figures silhouetted against a golden horizon. Ancient travelers kneeling beneath the stars, their prayers carried away by the wind, and the endless cycle of the dunes themselves, rising and falling like waves on an eternal ocean. The song spoke to him, not in words but in feelings. It carried the weight of the desert's history, the hopes and fears of those who had walked its sands before him. Finn felt a profound sense of connection, as though he were no longer a solitary figure wandering the desert, but part of something far greater, a tapestry of lives and stories woven into the fabric of the dunes. Time lost meaning as he sat there, immersed in the melody. The sun climbed higher, its light casting sharp shadows across the valley. Eventually, Finn opened his eyes, his heart full of a quiet reverence for the desert's song. He rose to his feet, brushing the sand from his clothes, and took a final look at the rocks before continuing his journey. The melody followed him as he walked, faint and distant, but always present. It seemed to guide his steps, leading him away from the valley and toward the unknown horizon. Finn felt lighter now, as though the song had lifted some unseen burden from his shoulders. The desert no longer felt empty. It was alive with whispers and echoes, each one a reminder of the stories it held. As the day wore on, Finn found himself reflecting on the old man's words. "The desert speaks to those who listen," he had said. Finn realized now what he had meant. The desert's song was its voice, a language spoken not with words, but with the wind, the sand, and the silence. It was a voice that required patience to hear and understanding to comprehend. By the time the sun dipped low on the horizon, Finn had reached the base of a towering dune. He decided to make camp for the night, unpacking his mat and laying it out on the sand. As he settled in, the melody continued to play softly in his mind, a comforting presence that lulled him into a state of calm. The stars emerged one by one, their light sharp and clear against the inky blackness of the sky. Finn lay back, his hands clasped behind his head, and watched as the heavens unfolded above him. The desert's song had quieted now, replaced by the soft rustle of the wind and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. But its essence remained, a reminder that he was never truly alone. Finn closed his eyes, letting the desert's whispers carry him into sleep. In his dreams, the melody returned, weaving itself into visions of golden sands and endless horizons. The desert's stories unfolded around him, each one a fragment of a greater whole. And as he dreamed, Finn felt the desert's secrets begin to take shape, their meaning slowly revealing itself in the quiet song of the wind. The sun hung low in the sky, its golden light glinting off the endless waves of sand as Finn pushed forward. His steps were steady, though his legs ached from the day's journey. He had learned to move in rhythm with the desert, to follow its subtle cues, the direction of the wind, the shading of the dunes, and the whispers that seemed to call from the horizon. As evening began to settle, a flash of green caught his eye, a color that did not belong to the desert's usual palette. He paused, narrowing his eyes to confirm it wasn't another mirage. It was real. A cluster of palm trees stood in the distance, their silhouettes shimmering in the heat. The promise of an oasis stirred a new energy in Finn, and he quickened his pace, his heart lifting with each step. The thought of water, cool and clear, felt like a reward after the unrelenting dryness of the day. When he reached the oasis, the sight was more breathtaking than he could have imagined. A pool of water, its surface smooth as glass, reflected the fiery hues of the setting sun. Around it, lush greenery thrived, date palms, flowering shrubs, and patches of soft grass that seemed to glow in the fading light. The air was cooler here, carrying the sweet scent of blooming flowers and damp earth. Finn dropped his pack near the edge of the water and knelt down, cupping his hands to drink. The water was crisp and refreshing, its taste as pure as the desert sky. After quenching his thirst, Finn sat back and let himself take in the scene. The oasis felt otherworldly, like a hidden paradise untouched by time. He noticed carvings on some of the larger stones near the water's edge, symbols and patterns that seemed ancient, their meanings lost to time. Intrigued, he traced his fingers over the etchings, feeling the grooves worn smooth by centuries of wind and water. The symbols seemed to hum faintly beneath his touch, as though they were alive with the desert's energy. As twilight deepened, the oasis transformed. The sky shifted to shades of indigo and violet, and the first stars began to appear. The water reflected the heavens, creating the illusion of a second sky. Fireflies emerged from the foliage, their tiny lights dancing in the air like sparks from an unseen fire. Finn leaned back against a palm tree, feeling a profound sense of peace wash over him. The oasis was more than a place of rest. It was a sanctuary, a sacred space where the desert's magic felt tangible. Finn's thoughts drifted to the old man he had met in the grove. The desert reveals its truths in whispers, the man had said. Here, in the stillness of the oasis, Finn felt he was beginning to understand. The desert's whispers were not just sounds carried by the wind. They were moments like this, where the vastness of the world narrowed to a single point of clarity. The symbols on the stones, the gentle ripple of the water, the firefly's glow, each seemed to hold a piece of a larger story, one that he was only beginning to comprehend. Sleep came easily that night. Finn spread his mat beneath the stars, the palm leaves rustling softly above him. The air was cool, perfumed with the scent of flowers and damp grass. As he closed his eyes, the sounds of the oasis filled his ears. The gentle lapping of water, the chirping of crickets, and the occasional call of a night bird. It was a symphony unlike any he had known, a song of life thriving against all odds. In his dreams, the oasis came alive. The carvings on the stones glowed with an inner light, their patterns shifting and rearranging themselves. Figures appeared in the water's reflection, travelers, their faces weathered but serene, moving through the desert as if guided by an unseen force. Finn felt himself walking among them, his steps light and purposeful. The oasis was their meeting place, a crossroads where their journeys intersected and their stories intertwined. When Finn woke, the sky was just beginning to brighten. The fireflies had vanished, and the stars were fading into the soft glow of dawn. He sat up, stretching and breathing in the cool morning air. The oasis looked different in the early light, its colors softer but no less vibrant. Finn walked to the water's edge and splashed his face, the coolness invigorating. He felt renewed, as though the oasis had not only quenched his thirst, but also fed his spirit. Before leaving, Finn took one last look at the carvings on the stones. He didn't understand their meaning, but he felt a deep respect for them, as if they were guardians of the oasis' secrets. With a quiet sense of gratitude, he adjusted his satchel and began his journey once more. The desert opening up before him, like a blank page waiting to be written upon. The oasis faded into the distance as Finn climbed the next dune. The sun rose higher, its warmth a reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. Yet Finn felt a quiet confidence building within him. The desert still held many secrets, but he was no longer afraid of them. He was learning to listen, to see, and to understand. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Finn felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The sun climbed higher into the pale blue sky as Finn pressed forward, his steps steady despite the growing warmth of the day. The rhythm of the desert was now familiar to him, its whispers guiding him along paths that seemed to reveal themselves only as he walked. Each dune he crested brought new sights and sounds, the silence of the desert broken occasionally by the soft rustle of wind or the distant cry of a bird. But today, the desert carried something new to his ears, a faint hum of activity, a sound unlike the natural symphony of the sands. Finn stopped, tilting his head to listen. The sound was faint, like the murmur of voices and the rhythmic clatter of movement. Intrigued, he adjusted his course toward the source, his curiosity growing with each step. As he neared the base of a large dune, the sounds grew clearer. The rhythmic creak of wooden wheels, the laughter of children, and the chatter of voices speaking in a variety of tongues blended together in a lively harmony. Finn climbed the dune cautiously, and as he reached the top, he was greeted by a sight that filled him with wonder. Nestled in the hollow between two towering dunes was a bustling market, a vibrant splash of color and life against the golden sands. Brightly colored tents flapped gently in the breeze, their fabrics adorned with intricate patterns and designs. Merchants called out to passers-by, their voices carrying the promise of rare goods and exotic treasures. Camels adorned with tassels and bells rested nearby, their calm demeanors a contrast to the lively energy of the scene. Finn descended into the market, the atmosphere enveloping him in its warmth and vibrancy. The air was filled with the scent of spices, roasted nuts, and sweet confections. He wandered among the stalls, his eyes wide as he took in the array of goods on display. Gleaming silver jewelry, finely woven textiles, jars of fragrant oils, and stacks of dried fruits and nuts. Each stall seemed to tell its own story, the merchants eager to share tales of their journeys and the origins of their wares. One merchant, a woman with a bright smile and a cascade of beaded necklaces around her neck, beckoned Finn over. "Traveler," she said, her voice melodic, "you look like someone in search of something special, perhaps a token to remember your journey?" Finn smiled and stepped closer, admiring the craftsmanship of the necklaces displayed on her table. Each one seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, their beads catching the light like tiny fragments of the desert itself. "These are beautiful," he said. "Did you make them yourself?" The woman nodded proudly. "Each one is crafted with care and carries a piece of the desert's spirit." "This one," she said, holding up a necklace with beads and shades of amber and gold, "is said to bring clarity to those who wear it. And this one," she added, lifting another adorned with deep blues and greens, "carries the calm of the oasis." Finn chose a simple piece, its beads a mix of earthy tones that reminded him of the shifting sands. As he handed over a few coins in exchange, the merchant wished him well on his journey, her words carrying the warmth of someone who understood the pull of the desert. He continued to explore the market, pausing to listen to musicians who played lively tunes on stringed instruments and drums. Children darted between the stalls, their laughter ringing out like wind chimes. At one stall, Finn sampled a piece of honey-drenched pastry, its sweetness a sharp contrast to the dryness of the desert air. The vendor, an elderly man with a kind smile, shared a story of how the recipe had been passed down through generations of his family. As the day wore on, Finn found himself drawn to a quieter corner of the market, where a circle of travelers had gathered around a storyteller. The man's voice was rich and resonant, weaving tales of ancient kings and mythical creatures that once roamed the desert. Finn listened, captivated, as the stories painted vivid pictures in his mind. The storyteller's words felt like an extension of the desert itself, timeless and filled with wonder. By the time the sun began to set, the market was bathed in the soft glow of twilight. Lanterns were lit, their golden light casting flickering shadows on the sand. The energy of the market softened, the lively chatter giving way to quiet conversations and laughter. Finn found a small rise near the edge of the market and sat down, watching as the scene unfolded before him. The market felt like a living, breathing entity, its heart beating in rhythm with the desert. As the stars began to appear, Finn felt a deep sense of gratitude. The market had been an unexpected gift, a reminder that even in the vastness of the desert, there was connection and community. He stayed there until the market's lights began to dim and the sounds of the day gave way to the quiet of night. When he finally rose to leave, his heart felt lighter, his spirit buoyed by the experience. The desert stretched out before him once more, its silence a comforting presence after the lively energy of the market. Finn walked with renewed purpose, the necklace around his neck a tangible reminder of the day. The market had been a brief respite, a glimpse of the human stories woven into the sands. As he disappeared into the night, he carried those stories with him, their echoes mingling with the whispers of the wind. The desert stretched out endlessly before Finn, the last remnants of the market's sounds and colors fading into memory as he pressed onward. The sand underfoot shimmered like liquid gold in the midday sun, and the heat wrapped around him like a heavy cloak. His satchel felt heavier today, weighed down not just by his belongings but by the stories he had gathered. Each tale carried its own weight, a reminder of the lives intertwined with the desert's vastness. As the day wore on, the horizon began to ripple. Finn paused, narrowing his eyes against the blinding glare. In the distance, he saw something unusual. A shimmering image flickered, bending and shifting as though the desert itself were trying to reveal a secret. He blinked, unsure if it was real or a trick of the heat. The mirage seemed to take shape, forming the outline of something extraordinary, an ancient city with towering spires and flowing banners. Intrigued and cautious, Finn began to walk toward it, his steps quickening despite the heat. The vision grew clearer, the city's details sharpening with each passing moment. Walls of sandstone rose high, adorned with carvings and symbols that seemed to dance in the sunlight. The gates stood open, inviting him to step into the world of his imagination. As he approached, the air around him grew cooler, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the open desert. The sounds of the city began to reach his ears. The laughter of children, the clinking of metal, the soft hum of conversation. Finn's heart raced. He could almost feel the stones beneath his feet, the bustle of life all around him. But just as he reached out to touch the gates, the city wavered and dissolved into the air, leaving nothing but empty sand in its place. Finn stood frozen, his hand still extended toward the mirage that had vanished before his eyes. The silence of the desert returned, heavy and unbroken. A wave of disappointment washed over him, but it was quickly replaced by wonder. The vision had been so vivid, so real. He couldn't help but wonder what it meant. Was it a memory of something long past, or a promise of what could be? Shaking off his disorientation, Finn continued his journey. The desert seemed different now, as if it had revealed a glimpse of its hidden soul. The sands whispered louder, their voices rising and falling like waves. Finn's mind raced with questions. The carvings he had seen, the faces in the city streets, were they connected to the stories he had heard at the market? Or was the mirage a message meant for him alone? As the afternoon stretched into evening, Finn found a small rise where he could rest. He sat down, his eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. The desert had a way of testing him, challenging his perceptions and forcing him to confront the unknown. The mirage had been a test, he realized, a reflection of his own longing for connection and understanding. Finn reached into his satchel and pulled out the necklace he had purchased at the market. The beads glinted softly in the fading light, their earthy tones grounding him. He held it in his hands, turning it over as if it might offer answers. The merchant's words came back to him. Each piece carries the spirit of the desert. Perhaps the mirage had been another whisper of that spirit, a reminder that the desert was alive in ways he was only beginning to understand. The first stars appeared overhead, their light piercing through the deepening twilight. Finn leaned back, his gaze fixed on the sky. He thought of the ancient city, its gates wide open, and wondered if he would ever see it again. Perhaps it wasn't meant to be found in the way he had imagined. Perhaps it was a story the desert wanted him to carry, a piece of its endless mystery. As sleep claimed him, Finn dreamed of the city once more. This time, he stood within its walls, the air alive with music and laughter. The faces of the people were clear now, each one smiling as if they had been waiting for him all along. He felt a deep sense of belonging, as though he had finally found a place where he was meant to be. The dream lingered even as he woke, the memory of it soft but vivid, like the faint scent of flowers carried on the wind. Finn rose with the dawn, the desert's cool morning air brushing against his skin. The mirage had left him with more questions than answers, but he felt no frustration. The desert had its own way of teaching, and Finn was learning to trust its lessons. He adjusted his satchel and began walking again, his steps steady and purposeful. The horizon stretched out before him, vast and unending, a reminder that the journey was far from over. The desert whispered its secrets, and Finn listened, ready to discover what lay ahead. The desert's vast expanse glowed under the soft light of dusk, the horizon painted in shades of amber and deep purple. Finn walked with a renewed sense of purpose, the mysteries of the mirage lingering in his mind. The cool evening air brought relief after the scorching heat of the day, and as the first stars began to pierce the twilight, he noticed a flicker of movement in the distance. At first, it was faint, a line of figures barely distinguishable against the shifting dunes. Finn paused, narrowing his eyes to focus on the scene. As he drew closer, the shapes took form. A caravan, its camels strung together in a steady procession, their riders silhouetted against the fading light. The gentle jingling of bells and the low hum of conversation reached his ears, carried by the desert breeze. Finn quickened his pace, drawn to the warmth of human presence after days of solitude. The caravan was larger than he expected, with brightly adorned camels bearing bundles of goods and riders draped in flowing robes. A fire had been lit at the center of the group, its golden glow casting flickering shadows on the sand. Finn approached cautiously, unsure of how he would be received. A tall man with a welcoming smile stepped forward, his robe swaying gently in the breeze. "Welcome, traveler," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "The desert is kinder when its paths cross." "Thank you," Finn replied, his voice tinged with gratitude. "I've been walking alone for days. Your company is a welcome sight." The man gestured for Finn to join the group, and soon he found himself seated near the fire, its warmth seeping into his weary limbs. The caravan's members greeted him with kindness, offering water and a bowl of spiced stew. Finn ate slowly, savoring the flavors that seemed to capture the essence of the desert itself, a blend of earthiness and warmth. As the night deepened, the caravan came alive with stories and music. A young woman with a stringed instrument plucked out a melody that echoed through the stillness, her voice rising in a hauntingly beautiful song. Finn listened, captivated, as the lyrics spoke of journeys through endless sands, of dreams carried by the stars, and of the unseen bonds that connected all travelers. The tall man, who introduced himself as Malik, shared tales of the caravan's adventures. "We follow the stars," he explained, pointing to the glittering expanse above them. "They are our map, our guide. Each journey brings new challenges, but also new treasures." Finn leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "What kind of treasures?" Malik's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Not all treasures are gold and jewels, my friend. Some are stories, some are connections, and some are the simple knowledge that you've walked a path few have seen." The words resonated deeply with Finn. He thought of the mirage, the market, and the symbols etched into the stones at the oasis. Each experience felt like a thread in a larger tapestry, a story that was still unfolding. As the fire crackled and the music continued, Finn felt a sense of belonging he hadn't experienced in years. The caravan's members treated him not as a stranger, but as one of their own, a fellow wanderer on the desert's vast canvas. He shared his own stories, of the mirage that had beckoned him, of the oasis that had offered sanctuary, and of the market's vibrant life. His words were met with nods of understanding and murmurs of agreement, as if the caravan had also encountered the desert's many faces. When the music finally quieted and the conversation softened, the group began to settle for the night. Finn was given a blanket and a place near the fire, the stars above them shining brighter than ever. As he lay down, he felt the gentle weight of the necklace around his neck, its beads cool against his skin. The desert's whispers seemed to mingle with the faint hum of the caravan, a harmony that lulled him into a peaceful sleep. In his dreams, the caravan became a river of light, its members glowing like stars as they moved through the desert. The dunes shifted and shimmered, and Finn felt himself carried along, his steps light and unburdened. The dream was vivid and comforting, a reminder that even in the vastness of the desert, he was never truly alone. When Finn woke with the first light of dawn, the caravan was already stirring. Camels were being loaded, fires extinguished, and voices called out as preparations were made to continue the journey. Malik approached him, a warm smile on his face. "The desert is wide, and its paths are many," he said, "but you are welcome to travel with us for as long as our paths align." Finn nodded, grateful for the offer. "Thank you. I think I will." As the caravan began to move, Finn found himself walking alongside Malik, the rhythm of their steps matching the gentle swaying of the camels. The stars had faded, replaced by the soft glow of the morning sun, but their presence lingered in Finn's heart. The caravan was more than a group of travelers. It was a symbol of connection, a reminder that even in the solitude of the desert, there was always a thread that tied one journey to another. The desert stretched on, vast and unending, but Finn walked with renewed purpose. The whispers of the sands and the songs of the caravan merged into a melody that carried him forward, a harmony of discovery and belonging. The caravan moved steadily through the dunes, their pace unhurried but purposeful. The sun climbed higher into the sky, its heat pressing down on the desert like a heavy hand. Finn walked near the middle of the procession, his steps syncing with the rhythmic sway of the camels. The sound of bells jingling softly accompanied the murmurs of the travelers, creating a melody that blended seamlessly with the desert's whispers. By midday, the wind began to pick up, carrying with it a strange energy. Finn noticed Malik glancing frequently at the horizon, his usually calm demeanor tinged with tension. The air had shifted. What was once dry and still now carried a faint sting, as if the sands themselves were restless. Malik slowed his pace, signaling the caravan to halt. He raised a hand, his voice firm but steady. "A storm is coming. We must prepare." The travelers sprang into action with practiced efficiency, securing their goods and tying down the tents. Finn helped where he could, following the others' lead as they worked to anchor their belongings against the rising wind. The sky darkened, the sun's harsh light replaced by a muted glow as a wall of sand loomed in the distance. The storm arrived with a roar, its fury announced by the howling wind and the stinging lash of sand. Finn wrapped his scarf tightly around his face, leaving only his eyes exposed. The world around him vanished, swallowed by a swirling chaos of golden brown. The air was thick, each breath heavy with grit, and the sound of the storm drowned out everything else. Finn huddled close to a cluster of camels, their forms barely visible through the storm's haze. He could feel their unease, their low groans and shifting hooves, a testament to their discomfort. Malik's voice called out, calm yet commanding, as he moved among the group, ensuring everyone was accounted for and secure. Time lost meaning in the storm's grip. The relentless wind tore at Finn's clothing and filled his ears with its deafening wail. He closed his eyes, focusing on the weight of the necklace around his neck, its beads cool against his skin. The storm felt like a test, a challenge issued by the desert itself, and Finn knew he had no choice but to endure. Gradually the wind began to ease, its howls softening to whispers. The air cleared, revealing a landscape transformed. The dunes had shifted, their shapes altered by the storm's relentless force. The caravan emerged from their makeshift shelters, brushing sand from their clothes and shaking dust from their belongings. Despite the storm's ferocity, there was no panic, only a quiet resilience that spoke of experience and understanding. Malik approached Finn, his face streaked with sand but his eyes steady. "You weathered the storm well," he said, clapping Finn on the shoulder. "The desert tests those who walk its paths, but it also teaches." Finn nodded, his throat dry but his spirit unbroken. "It was unlike anything I've ever experienced," he admitted. For a moment it felt like the desert was alive, pushing and pulling with its own will. Malik smiled, a hint of admiration in his gaze. "You're beginning to understand. The desert is alive in its own way. It watches, it challenges, and sometimes it reveals." The caravan regrouped, their journey resuming as the sun dipped lower in the sky. The air was cooler now, the storm's aftermath leaving a strange calm in its wake. Finn felt a newfound respect for the desert, its power and unpredictability etched into his memory. As night fell, the group made camp, their tents glowing softly in the starlight. Finn sat by the fire, the warmth soothing his tired body. The storm had left him with a sense of awe, a reminder of the desert's vastness and its ability to shape everything within it. He listened as the others shared stories of past storms, their voices filled with a mixture of reverence and humor. Finn's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the dunes stretched endlessly into the night. The storm had tested him, but it had also strengthened his resolve. He felt more connected to the desert now, its whispers no longer foreign but familiar, like the voice of an old friend. The fire crackled softly, its light dancing on the faces of the travelers. Finn closed his eyes, the day's events playing over in his mind. The storm had been a challenge, but it had also been a gift, a reminder that the desert held lessons for those who dared to listen. As sleep claimed him, Finn dreamed of the storm, its winds carrying him across the dunes like a leaf on the breeze. The desert's voice was clearer now, its secrets unfolding in a song that filled his heart with wonder. When he woke, he knew he was ready to face whatever lay ahead, his steps guided by the desert's timeless melody. The morning after the storm dawned with a rare stillness. The desert seemed to hold its breath, the dunes untouched by wind, their curves smooth and glistening under the early light. Finn woke to the coolness of dawn, the air crisp and refreshing. The storm felt like a distant memory, yet its impact lingered in the reshaped landscape and the quiet resilience of the caravan. As the group prepared to continue their journey, Malik approached Finn. a small object cradled in his hands. "A token for your courage," he said, offering it to Finn. It was a smooth stone, polished by years of sand and wind, its surface etched with faint natural patterns that resembled flowing water. Finn accepted the gift with a nod of gratitude. Turning the stone over in his hands, it was cool to the touch, its weight grounding him. "Thank you," he said. "It feels like a piece of the desert itself." Malik's eyes sparkled with understanding. "It is. The desert gives us what we need, not always what we seek." The caravan set out, their pace steady and deliberate. The sand was firm beneath their feet, compacted by the storm, making the journey easier. Finn walked alongside Malik, their conversation flowing like the dunes themselves. Malik shared tales of travelers who had come before, their lives intertwined with the desert's endless expanse. As the sun climbed higher, Finn noticed a glint in the distance, a faint shimmer that caught the light. Malik's gaze followed his, and a knowing smile spread across his face. "It seems the desert has more gifts to offer today," he said. Curiosity spurred Finn forward, his steps quickening as the shimmer grew clearer. It was a pool of water, nestled in a hollow between two dunes. Unlike the oasis he had visited before, this one was smaller, more secluded, its surface perfectly still. Surrounding it were clusters of wildflowers, their colors vivid against the golden sand. The sight was both unexpected and breathtaking, a hidden gem in the heart of the desert. The caravan paused to rest, the travelers spreading out around the pool. Some refilled their water skins, while others simply sat in the shade of the surrounding dunes, their voices hushed as if in reverence of the place. Finn knelt by the water's edge, dipping his hands into its cool depths. The sensation was invigorating, a reminder of the desert's ability to sustain life even in its harshest moments. As he sat by the water, Finn noticed something half buried in the sand nearby. He reached out, brushing away the grains to reveal a small, intricately carved figurine. It depicted a bird with outstretched wings, its craftsmanship delicate and precise. Finn held it up to the light, marveling at the detail. The figurine felt ancient, as if it carried the stories of countless travelers who had passed through this place. Malik approached, his gaze falling on the figurine. "Ah," he said, his tone both surprised and pleased. "The desert's gifts are never random. That bird is a symbol of freedom and resilience. It seems the desert sees something of itself in you." Finn turned the figurine over in his hands, its smooth surface warm from the sun. "Why does the desert give these gifts?" he asked, his voice thoughtful. Malik's expression grew contemplative. "Perhaps it's the desert's way of speaking to us, of reminding us that we are part of something greater. These gifts are messages, pieces of its story passed down to those who listen." The caravan lingered at the pool longer than usual, the travelers reluctant to leave its tranquil beauty. Finn took the time to sketch the scene in his journal, his pencil capturing the gentle curves of the dunes and the vibrant splash of the wildflowers. He felt a deep connection to the place, as if it had been waiting for him all along. When the group finally resumed their journey, the pool faded into the distance, its memory etched into Finn's mind. He carried the stone and the figurine in his satchel, their presence a comforting weight. The desert's whispers seemed louder now, their messages clearer, as if the gifts had unlocked a new understanding within him. That night, as the caravan made camp beneath a sky bursting with stars, Finn sat by the fire, the figurine in his hand. The flames cast dancing shadows across its surface, bringing it to life in a way that felt almost magical. He thought of the storm, the pool, and the countless unseen forces that shaped the desert's vast expanse. The desert's gifts were more than objects. They were pieces of its soul, reminders of its endless capacity to teach and transform. Finn fell asleep with the figurine by his side, its presence grounding him as he drifted into dreams of soaring birds and shifting sands. The desert's voice was no longer a whisper. It was a melody, rich and layered, guiding him forward on his journey. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he would face it with an open heart and a spirit shaped by the desert's gifts. The final stretch of the journey began with the quiet hum of dawn. Finn awoke to the faint glow of first light spilling over the dunes, painting the desert in soft golds and blues. The air was cool and still, a perfect canvas for the day to begin. The caravan stirred around him, voices low and movements deliberate as they prepared to set off. Today, Malik had said, they would part ways, their paths diverging as each traveler followed their own destiny. Finn felt a mix of emotions, gratitude for the shared experiences and a bittersweet anticipation of what lay ahead. He had grown accustomed to the companionship of the caravan, to the stories shared by the fire, and the unspoken bond forged by the desert's trials. Yet, the horizon called to him with a promise of new discoveries, its endless expanse whispering his name. As the group began to move, Malik approached Finn, a small smile on his face. In his hands, he held a rolled piece of parchment. A map, he explained, pressing it into Finn's hands. Not of the desert, but of the stars. They will guide you, as they have guided us. Finn unrolled the parchment, its surface marked with constellations and the faint lines connecting them. It was simple yet elegant, a tool both practical and symbolic. He looked up at Malik, his gratitude evident. Thank you. I will treasure this. Malik's expression softened. The desert has a way of bringing people together, even if only for a time. Remember its lessons, Finn, and may your journey always lead you to what you seek. With a final nod, Malik turned back to the caravan, his figure soon blending into the flow of travelers and camels. Finn watched them for a while, their forms shrinking against the vastness of the dunes until they disappeared entirely, leaving only the gentle sigh of the wind. Now alone, Finn stood at the edge of the dune, the horizon stretching endlessly before him. He felt the weight of his satchel, the stone and figurine nestled safely within, and the map rolled tightly in his hand. Each item was a reminder of the journey so far, of the people he had met and the lessons the desert had taught him. Finn took a deep breath, the air filling his lungs with a cool clarity. The desert's whisper seemed louder now, its voice guiding his steps as he began to walk. The sands shifted beneath his feet, their soft crunch a steady rhythm that matched the beat of his heart. As the sun climbed higher, Finn found himself drawn to the horizon, its pull stronger than ever. The dunes rolled like waves, their peaks and valleys catching the light in a dance of shadows and gold. Finn felt a sense of harmony with the landscape, as though he were part of its vast, timeless story. Hours passed, the sun dipping lower in the sky. Finn paused atop a particularly high dune, the view before him taking his breath away. The desert stretched out in every direction, its beauty overwhelming in its simplicity. The sky blazed with the colors of sunset, hues of orange, pink, and violet blending seamlessly into the deepening blue of night. It was a moment of perfect stillness, a snapshot of eternity. Finn sat down, his legs folding beneath him as he allowed himself to simply be. The stone and figurine rested in his hands, their surfaces warm from the sun. He traced the patterns etched into the stone and ran his fingers over the bird's delicate wings, feeling a connection to something greater than himself. The first stars appeared, their light piercing through the twilight like tiny beacons. Finn unrolled the map Malik had given him, its constellations aligning with the heavens above. He smiled, the sense of direction it offered both literal and symbolic. The stars were his guide, their presence a reminder that even in the vastness of the desert, he was never truly alone. As night enveloped the desert, Finn felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had changed him, reshaped his understanding of the world and his place within it. The desert had taught him to listen, to see beyond the surface, and to embrace the unknown with an open heart. Finn lay back, the cool sand cradling him as he gazed up at the infinite expanse of stars. The desert's melody played softly in his mind, a song of whispers and winds, of storms and gifts, of stories waiting to be uncovered. He closed his eyes, letting the rhythm of the desert carry him into sleep. Tomorrow, the journey would continue. The horizon was endless, its promises boundless. And Finn, guided by the stars and the desert's lessons, was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Thank you for joining us on Story Planet, where tales unfold to help you unwind. If you felt the desert's whispers, the gentle winds, and the starry skies, consider giving a thumbs up. Share this journey with friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe for more relaxing adventures. Wishing you peaceful nights and sweet dreams.